Welcome back to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Brightman, and it's my pleasure to welcome in to this episode Drew Hamm, writer for Wisconsin's Badger Notes and longtime covered Wisconsin for a long time. Drew, we've talked over the years. It's great to have you on. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here. It's excited. Wisconsin was on the bye last week, so excited to get back to some football talk.
So why don't you give some Rutgers fans a little bit of idea of just in terms of how the season's gone so far, your initial thoughts on Luke Fickell's first team, and where they are, I guess, in terms of expectations you had going into the season to where they're at right now.
Well, the Wisconsin team will definitely look different than any Wisconsin team that Rutgers fans have seen since they've been in the conference. But I kind of wish it didn't, because while Luke Fickell and Phil Longo, I think, have a really good idea for the offense, we don't really have the personnel quite yet to run it how they want to. And so Braylon Allen, who is, our All-American running back, should still be getting the ball a bulk of the time, especially now that our backup, Chez Mellusi, is out for the season again.
Right.
The defense isn't quite as good as it has been. I think there have just been enough changes where the guys are still kind of figuring it out. I'm hoping that as the season progresses, it'll get better. And it seems like it has. As far as expectations, looking at the schedule before the season started, Ohio State seemed like the only for sure loss on the schedule. The Big Ten West is just a joke of a division. It's incredible content in terms of how bad the football is, but like there aren't any good teams. Wisconsin is kind of the best of the worst, I'd think, but it's taken them a few weeks to kind of get going. They looked their best in their most recent game against Purdue 2 weeks ago, so we'll see if they've kind of hit their stride, but I will believe it when I see it, I guess.
Yeah, Wisconsin definitely seems like a team that's just going to get better as the year goes on. And obviously, Fickell, I think is a great hire for them. I was wondering about the defense. Is it more of just the change in scheme? Is it the person? You mentioned on the offense, maybe the personnel not fitting the scheme as well. I was wondering if you thought that on the defense as well, just in terms of the change from the 2 gap to the 1 gap with Tressel, and the linebackers being a little bit more traditional, in terms of maybe downhill versus as athletic as maybe they need to be.
Yeah, I don't think the scheme is crazy different, and that is not having a huge effect. I just think the losses that Wisconsin suffered on defense from last year, they lost their 2 best defensive players, kind of nose tackle, defensive tackle Keanu Benton, and then edge rusher Nick Herbig. And those 2 might have covered up some cracks in the foundation last year with how good they were. But I think losing them and then also switching a little bit how they play has kind of had the guys thinking more than reacting when they're out there on defense. And just to be perfectly frank, outside of kind of Benton, who was an unheralded recruit coming in, Wisconsin hasn't recruited the defensive line particularly well, and certainly not in comparison to the big boys in the Big Ten, but not even in comparison to the middle of the road teams, I'd say. So I think there's also a bit of a talent deficiency on the defensive line, and as Fickell and Tressel start recruiting more to their scheme, I think that will get better. But this year is kind of a bit of a transition year in that regard.
And how do you mentioned Braylon Allen, obviously Chez Mellusi now for the year. How do you think that that's going to change things up? I know the Wisconsin staff has even kind of said, they don't want to overload him with too much of a workload. I'm skeptical of that, at least in this game as a Rutgers fan. I feel like if he gets rolling early on, they'll probably ride the hot hand with him. How do you think the offense looks different in this game with Mellusi now out?
I think it might return a little bit to a more traditional Wisconsin offense where they're just running the ball more. It won't be anything from under center. as much, but Braylon Allen, I think, should get as many carries as he can handle because backing him up now are some very unproven players who I think, could be solid, but in a third running back role, I wouldn't want any of them as my backup running back who is getting 30-40% of the backfield touches. So if Allen can get it rolling against Rutgers, I think they should just feed him until, he's full. But if they try and I feel like at certain times Longo has tried to like prove a point that you can pass at Wisconsin when you really should probably still just be running it more and then taking the pass when it gets there. But we'll see how that goes.
And talking about passing, Tanner Mordecai, quarterback, transferred in. He's looked pretty good, I thought. I thought the Purdue game, he looked pretty good. How do you think he's coming along? And, I know he's a dual threat, but it seems like he's, in spots and more of a passer than a runner.
For sure. He's definitely more of a passer. He just can run, which is a lot different than a lot of Wisconsin's quarterbacks who are, a little more statuesque in the pocket. But yeah, he's not a guy who's looking to run necessarily, but he can do it. I've been a touch underwhelmed with Mordecai. I thought the passing offense with the wide receivers that were brought in as transfers and with Chimere DK coming back, who I think is one of the better wide receivers Wisconsin has had in years. I thought the passing offense would look a little better. I maybe shouldn't have thought that because in the spring game, Mordecai threw like 4 or 5 interceptions against a Wisconsin defense that we kind of saw at the beginning of the season wasn't necessarily up to snuff. And so maybe I was just kind of looking past that with my hopes that the passing offense would be better. Like with most of the team, I think he is improving as the season has gone on, but it hasn't quite been what I hoped it would be.
That's fair. Yeah, I feel like Wisconsin's one of those teams that maybe was a little overrated at the start, and now I feel like they're getting better. And their only loss is a single-digit loss at Washington State. That's holding up pretty well so far.
For sure.
What in terms of this matchup with Rutgers, I guess, and coming off the bye, aside from the adjustment with Malusi, what should Rutgers fans expect, or what do you think Wisconsin will do in terms of attacking this game?
I think as boring as it sounds, especially for like talking to a Wisconsin guy about a Wisconsin game, they just need to run the ball and control the clock. I think that Rutgers isn't as bad as a casual fan thinks when they think of Rutgers in the Big Ten. For a couple years they were kind of down, but that's not the case anymore. Rutgers, the talent floor has been raised. I think on both sides of the ball they're better even than they were last year. I really like the linebacker. Is it Tyrell Powell?
Tyreem.
I really like him. Sorry, Tyreem. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's a really good player that we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on, know where he is because he makes plays. I think quarterback, I think Gavin Wimsatt is he's talented. And while he may not have, super crazy, completion percentage numbers, he doesn't turn the ball over a ton. At least this year he hasn't. And I think he's another guy who's just going to continue to get better. So I think that it's going to be a tougher game than a lot of Wisconsin fans would say, especially maybe at the beginning of the year before games had been played. I watched a lot of the first game, the Rutgers Northwestern game. And while, Northwestern is bad, like very bad, like Rutgers just kind of slowly squeezed the life out of them and like looked like a dominant team against a conference opponent. And so I think the game, I think it should be fun. I think it'll be most likely low scoring. I don't think either of these teams are going to be particularly explosive, but I think it should be a good game.
Yeah, and I think the way you detailed the way Wisconsin could come out and play is pretty much how Shiano likes to play too. So, I'm skeptical that they can win that way in terms of just trying to, control the clock and outrush Wisconsin. I think they're going to have to exploit, things in the pass game at some point and have some big plays there. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting matchup, and Wisconsin's pretty much owned Rutgers since they've been in the conference. But I feel like if they can continue to play mistake-free ball the way they have, it gives them a shot in a way that they haven't really had against Wisconsin so far.
Yeah, I think trying to like out Wisconsin is usually not the best idea.
I
But this
agree.
but this year I think it's a little different as like the offense has changed from your stereotypical Wisconsin offense. And they've made some mistakes and turned the ball over a couple times and gone 3 and out when they really needed to put together a 10 play drive. And so there definitely are advantages to be taken as an opponent, but I think to your point, Rutgers should probably be looking to maybe try and take a few chances early to try and get a quick touchdown or a big play and kind of put a little, fear into the back of Wisconsin's mind as they're going into the second quarter. Because except for the Purdue game, Wisconsin has been a bad first half team. Like they've just looked lost as soon as they come out on the field. And I don't know what they say at halftime, but it's worked and they've looked a lot better in the second half. But, against Washington State, it wasn't enough. They played much better, but they'd already dug themselves into a big hole. So, if Rutgers jumps out to 10-0, 14-3 lead at the end of the first quarter, I don't know. Then you could start playing, Greg Schiano, pound the rock, control the clock, and see what happens in the second half.
Well, that has actually been the formula in all their wins. Is exactly that. Is that they've got jumped out to a 2-score lead, and then they just kind of run it. And third quarter has been a struggle because of that. And then they've been able to kind of pull away in the fourth quarter, aside obviously from Michigan. I wanted to ask, Wisconsin offense has been really, really good though in the red zone. They're perfect, 18 of 18. And they mixed it up a little bit, but I was curious just in terms of is there anything that stands out in terms of why they've been successful in the red zone?
I think Mordecai's ability to extend plays and get yards if something breaks down has been helpful. I think the play calling has actually been pretty good in the red zone too. I don't think Longo gets too cute down there, and he also will dial up kind of, a weird play every now and then to keep people on their toes. But it's mostly just kind of giving it to Braylon Allen and letting him do some work, or Mordecai has rushed in a couple times. And then, once they get down inside the 5-yard line, you just kind of got to gain a yard and a half on every play, and then you're in the end zone. I mean, it isn't aesthetically pleasing, but it does get you 6 points. So I don't think they're doing anything crazy that Rutgers would have to scheme for specifically, but it is tough to stop the Badgers once they get down close to the goal line.
And obviously the coaches and the players aren't, going into it this way, but and as fans, we get to speculate on things. Any concern that they have Iowa next week and potentially that maybe Rutgers is being could be especially if Wisconsin maybe jumps out to a lead, maybe overlooked a little bit.
Maybe Iowa's always just an awful game. I hate playing Iowa so much. They're just the worst. And like it's a big rivalry game for us, and
Right.
their states are close together, and we both play stupid styles of football. Iowa even more so than Wisconsin. But I'd like to think that they are now past the point this season where they think they can just show up and win a football game, because that clearly hasn't been the case. They, have already lost a football game, for instance, but they've also struggled in the first half against teams like Buffalo and Georgia Southern, who Buffalo has proven to be very bad, and Georgia Southern isn't that great either. And so I'd like to think that they are fully focused on beating Rutgers, and then they'll worry about Iowa on Sunday. But you never know with trying to guess the mindset of a group of 118 to 22-year-old kids. So
Very
hope,
true, very true. I think coming off the bye too maybe actually helps in refocusing them.
right. You've been, practicing for the same team for, over a week now. So hopefully they're just ready to get out there and play. And I don't know, man. Iowa, not to derail our discussion, I just hate Iowa so much. And they look bad, like
Yeah.
really bad. And they've got a backup quarterback going now who is a Wisconsin transfer, actually. So I don't know. I wouldn't be too worried about Iowa if I were anybody, let alone Wisconsin.
Yeah, Rutgers fans are definitely optimistic that going to Iowa in November that there's a realistic chance that for to come out with a win.
There is.
All right, so I wanted to ask you something that I love your takes on certain unique things, and I don't know if the Wisconsin fan base has been up in arms, but I've seen it with other fan bases as much as Rutgers. Bigger rival to Big Ten fan bases right now, actually being able to win a national title for the conference in football and basketball, or the Peacock Network.
Oh man. So this is our first game on Peacock,
Us too.
and
Yep.
people are upset. And our Jesse Temple is the Wisconsin beat reporter for The Athletic, and he posted a poll this morning asking people, like, what are you going to do for the game this weekend? Like, do you already have Peacock? You're going to get it and then cancel it right away. You're just going to get it and keep it, or you're not going to get it. And I was shocked that over 40% of the respondents, there were over 200 respondents when I voted, said they weren't going to watch the game. They weren't signing up for Peacock, and they were just going to listen to the game on the radio, which I thought that number would be way lower. I understand being, upset about all the streaming services you require as a person these days. Like, I've got kids, I've got 1,000 streaming services to watch all the shows they want to watch. But and I whatever. It's just there's going to be basketball on there soon, and then other sports. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the craziest thing to subscribe to watch your dumb team play.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's $6 a month. I get that it's frustrating. Things are different now, but I mean, I'm old enough to remember you could only follow certain Rutgers games, especially basketball, like in the 80s. It was radio was your only option. It wasn't even on TV. So, and if you go to a game, I mean, you can't even get a beer close to $6. So I feel like it's something to be upset about, but I think the Rutgers percentage would be even higher than 40%. I'm getting requests. People want a list of what bars they can go to in the state that carry Peacock that you can watch the game.
Wow. I understand taking a wild moral stance on stuff like this. I get it. I do it too. But at a certain point, don't you just want to sit on your couch and watch the game and
Exactly.
drink your beer and go to your bathroom? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're probably at a certain stage in our life where, we have kids and we would prefer to do that than going to somewhere and just, being out watching the game. But I kind of find the whole Peacock thing kind of funny how people are, because it is polarizing and people do get very upset about it.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing until this week, since we hadn't played yet. But yeah, people are fired up. That's gonna unite part of the conference fan base against NBC.
Well, if you look at basketball too, like India, I don't know how many Wisconsin got. Rutgers only got 2, but was Michigan State, Indiana, they all got 5 or 6 games that are on Peacock.
Yeah, we got a bunch, and it was a couple of our big non-conference games too. We play Tennessee, and that's going to be on Peacock, and that was a big deal. And then
wow.
and then we had, I don't know if it was as many as 6, but we had more than 2. It was probably 4 or 5.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be interesting. See how that goes. But listen, the Big Ten, the revenue is going up, and there's got to be a reason, right? Why the media rights continue to go up.
Yeah, as I've always said, as long as we're creating value for the shareholders, then I'm for whatever decision they make. Good, good. Whatever.
Yeah.
Screw NBC.
All right. So, any closing thoughts on the matchup on Saturday? You don't have to give a prediction per se, but any keys or maybe anybody on Wisconsin Rutgers fans should be aware about any kind of thing you want to just kind of point out.
Um, yeah, I don't know like a score prediction wise. I do think Wisconsin will end up winning. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I know sometimes these Wisconsin Rutgers games in the past have gotten a little bit out of hand. I don't think that'll be the case this year. A player that Rutgers fans might want to look out for that you might not think of. Our slot receiver Will Pauling is a transfer. This is his first year in Madison. He's really good, and if you don't have three good cornerbacks, then he's gonna burn you. And he's short, fast, and get the ball in his hands as much as possible and try and let him make plays in space, as an offensive coordinator would say in the offseason about what they're trying to do. I think he's a guy you might want to keep an eye on, especially since we might not be able to run as often with Allen needing a breather here and there.
Yeah, that's a great point because I do think that Wisconsin passing the ball, they could be more effective than maybe even Wisconsin fans think in this game. And Rutgers really hasn't been tested too much in the past game so far. Actually, last question, I lied. I wanted to ask the kicker. He's 7 for 7, right, on field goals?
Yeah, he's been incredible. It blows my mind. Wisconsin hasn't had a good kicker since Rafael Gaglianone, which was many years ago. But yeah, he was a transfer from Ohio. He was like a freshman All American, and he has been even better than advertised. To be perfectly honest, like I used to have dread whenever Wisconsin would line up for a field goal, but now it's like, oh, if it's within 48 yards, this guy's probably going to drill it. So, yeah, he could be a weapon if the game is real close.
And I'm sorry, what's his name?
Vakos, Nathaniel
Oh,
Vakos.
yes. All right. Well, I really appreciate all your insight. I think, yeah, I hope for a good game as a Rutgers fan, but I look at Wisconsin as the clear favorite in the West now. I know that probably doesn't comfort you in terms of how bad that division is, but as Rutgers fans, I think this is not a game. I think we could, this would be a statement win for the program for sure. So I'm hoping they at least come out and give it a really good test, and we'll see what happens.
Indeed.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it. Anything you want to plug, where people can find you?
You can read my Wisconsin thoughts on Badger Notes. You can follow me on Twitter if you're still a brain poison person that's on that website. At my name, Drew Hamm, and then the number 5. And I know there are probably a decent amount of Rutgers fans who are also Eagles fans. I'm from outside of Philadelphia, and I write for Bleeding Green Nation. And go Birds.
Well, you have a pretty good NFL team to root for and write for. But Drew Hamm, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate all your insight and good luck on Saturday.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it.